In the lively city of Tamale, Ghana, a quiet and smart woman named Afiwa was planning to celebrate her 5th wedding anniversary with her husband, Kojo. But that special day turned into her worst nightmare. She walked in and caught Kojo in bed with her best friend, Isinam, the one person she trusted like a sister. Her heart broke in silence. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just walked away. That same night, she disappeared. No one knew where she went. No phone calls. No goodbye. Just a short, chilling note left on the table. Don't look for me. Kojo thought she had lost her mind. He didn't even try to find her. Ezinam moved into the house just 2 weeks later, like she had always been waiting. Neighbors whispered, but soon everyone stopped asking questions. Life moved on. To the world, Afiwa had vanished like a ghost. Her name faded from conversations. Kojo and Esinam began living like a married couple. They laughed, threw parties, and lived like nothing had happened. But far away, in silence, Afiwa was watching. She was not broken. She was planning. And when she returned, the world would never forget her again. After Afiwa disappeared without a trace, months passed in silence. There were no phone calls, no letters, no sign of life. People slowly stopped asking questions. Kojo took advantage of that silence. He went to the police and reported her as missing beyond hope. He acted like a grieving husband, even shedding a few fake tears in public. But deep down, he was happy. With Afiwa gone, he saw a golden opportunity. He wasted no time. Kojo began claiming everything they once owned together. First, he took full control of their house, the one Afiwa had designed herself. Then he went after her jewelry, the gold pieces left to her by her late mother. But he didn't stop there. He even tried to take her late father's farmland, the only piece of her family's legacy left behind. To him, she was no longer his wife, just a name on paper that needed to be erased. He filed for divorce, calling it abandonment. He told the judge with confidence, "She left me. She walked away. I've moved on." He held Esinam's hand as he spoke, acting like a man who had been wronged, not the one who caused the damage. The courtroom was quiet. The judge nodded, and the process began moving forward without Afiwa present. It was going to be an easy win. No one was there to fight back. Kojo and Esinam were already planning to change the name on the property documents. They believed it was only a matter of time before everything officially became theirs. But just as the court was about to finalize the case, something unexpected happened. Outside the courthouse, a sleek black Prado SUV slowly pulled up. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. A moment later, a woman stepped out, tall, calm, dressed in a sharp white suit and black sunglasses. Her presence alone made people stop and stare. The way she walked, slow and confident, made it clear she wasn't here by accident. A security guard tried to ask her name, but she didn't answer. She simply handed over a sealed envelope and continued walking into the courthouse. Inside the courtroom, the judge was about to sign the final divorce papers when a clerk rushed in with the envelope. The judge opened it, read the first page, and froze. His eyes widened. Then he looked up slowly. Afiwa had just entered the room. Gasps filled the courtroom. People turned to look. Kojo dropped Esinam's hand. His face went pale as if he had seen a ghost. Esinam's mouth fell open in shock. "It can't be," she whispered. But it was. Afiwa stood tall in front of them. Not broken, not lost, but stronger than ever. The judge removed his glasses and stood up, unable to hide his shock. "Madam Afiwa," he said, "where have you been all this time?" Afiwa looked straight at Kojo and Esinam. She took off her sunglasses slowly, her face calm and powerful. Her voice was clear. "I've been collecting proof," she said, "and building something you can't take from me." For a few seconds, no one spoke. The room was completely still. The judge asked the bailiff to read what was in the envelope. Inside were documents, bank statements, and recordings that would soon turn everything upside down. But even before that, just her return changed the air. Kojo could no longer pretend. Esinam could no longer smile. And the divorce that was supposed to be easy, it was now the beginning of something much, much bigger. Everyone in that courtroom knew this wasn't just a woman coming back. This was a storm walking in on 2 legs, and it had only just begun. The air outside the courthouse was hot and dry, but a cool breeze seemed to follow the black Prado SUV as it pulled up and parked at the entrance. Slowly, the door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was dressed in a clean, sharp white suit that glowed under the sun. Her black sunglasses covered her eyes, but her energy was impossible to miss. Strong, focused, and calm. People nearby turned to look. Some paused mid-conversation. Others pulled out their phones. Something about her felt important, powerful. Behind her, a tall bodyguard followed silently, holding a sealed brown envelope. Without saying a word, they walked into the courthouse. Inside, the divorce hearing was moments away from ending. Kojo sat beside Esinam, smirking, confident that nothing could go wrong. The judge held his pen, ready to sign the papers. Everything had gone exactly as Kojo planned. No one had challenged him. No one had stood up for Afiwa. It was almost over. Then the courtroom door opened. The bodyguard walked in first and handed the envelope to the clerk. Then Afiwa stepped in. For a second, no one in the room moved. Even the judge froze. He looked up, slowly removed his glasses, and stood in shock. Afiwa. She was alive. She was here. And she looked like a woman who had not just survived, but transformed. Gasps filled the room. Kojo's face turned white. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Esinam stood up and screamed as if she had seen a ghost. "This can't be happening," she whispered, but it was real. Afiwa was standing right there, staring directly at them with no fear in her eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't even blink. The judge spoke first. His voice was shaky, but respectful. "Madam Afiwa," he said, almost in disbelief. "Where have you been all this time?" Afiwa slowly removed her sunglasses, looked straight ahead, and answered in a calm, clear voice, "Collecting proof and building something you can't take from me." The courtroom went silent again. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody moved. The judge quickly asked the clerk to bring him the envelope. Inside it were neatly organized documents, all marked and labeled, bank statements, land transfer papers, even private recordings. The judge started reading, and as his eyes scanned the pages, his expression changed. What he was reading was shocking. Illegal transfers, forged signatures, secret meetings. Every dirty thing Kojo and Esinam had done while Afiwa was gone. It was all there. Kojo looked like he wanted to disappear. He leaned forward in his seat, sweating, his hands shaking. Esinam kept whispering something to him, her face full of panic. The judge looked up and asked, "Is this true, Mr. Kojo?" But Kojo couldn't answer. He was frozen, caught in his own trap. Afiwa stood there calmly, still saying nothing more. Her silence spoke louder than any words. She didn't come back to fight or beg. She came back with proof, with power, and with purpose. People in the courtroom started whispering. Some even clapped quietly. Word started spreading fast. Afiwa was not the broken woman they had imagined. She was something else now, something unshakable. Even the court officers looked at her differently, not as someone who vanished, but as someone who returned stronger. Kojo had told the world that she had gone mad, that she had abandoned her marriage. But now the truth stood tall in front of him, wearing white and showing no fear. The judge turned to the clerk. "This case is not over," he said. "In fact, it's just beginning." He then looked at Afiwa and said, "Please have a seat, madam. We need to hear everything." And just like that, the power in the room shifted. Afiwa didn't raise her voice. She didn't come with lawyers or threats. She came with truth, and it was enough to shake the courtroom to its core. That day was supposed to be the day Kojo won everything. Instead, it became the day Afiwa took back her voice, and the world started listening. The judge slowly opened the sealed file handed over by Afiwa's bodyguard. The whole courtroom waited in silence. Everyone's eyes were fixed on that brown envelope. What was inside? What kind of woman disappears for over a year and comes back dressed like a queen, handing over something like that? As the judge began to read, his face changed. The calm expression disappeared. His eyes narrowed. His hands tightened on the paper. And then he spoke. "This file contains serious evidence," the judge said firmly. "Bank statements, stolen assets, and voice recordings." Whispers filled the room. People leaned forward in their seats. Kojo looked nervous, but still tried to act strong. Esinam looked confused, not yet understanding what was about to hit them. The judge continued reading. The first part was about money. Bank accounts had been opened in Afiwa's name, without her permission. Large amounts of money had been moved from her joint accounts to secret ones, owned only by Kojo. Land papers, signed with her name, had been used to sell part of her late father's farmland, but Afiwa had proof she never signed anything. Her real signature was different, and the dates didn't even match where she was at the time. Then came the recordings. The courtroom went silent as the clerk played the first audio. Kojo's voice could be heard, clearly and calmly saying, "We'll say she ran away. People will believe it. Just give it time. I'll handle the lawyer." Another voice followed, S&M's, laughing softly. "Honestly, she's probably been eaten by wild dogs in the forest," she said, as if it were a joke. People gasped. A woman in the back covered her mouth. One man stood up in shock. Even the judge shook his head in disbelief. Kojo tried to stand and speak, but the judge raised his hand. "Sit down," he said firmly. Kojo sat, sweat pouring from his face. S&M tried to whisper something to him, but it was too late. The truth was out. The next document showed emails between S&M and a real estate agent. She was pretending to be Afiwa. She sent pictures of Afiwa's ID card, trying to sell land without her knowing. There were even screenshots of text messages where Kojo told S&M, "Once we sell this land, we're set. Afiwa is gone. No one's looking for her anymore." And through it all, Afiwa sat quietly, calm as ever. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Her face was like stone, strong, proud, untouchable. It wasn't revenge in her eyes. It was justice. She had spent over a year preparing for this, watching, studying, learning. Every page, every audio clip, every screenshot, she had collected them carefully. She didn't come back to argue. She came back with the truth. Kojo's lawyer stood up quietly and walked out of the courtroom. He didn't say a word. He just left. He knew there was no way to defend this. The case was falling apart. Kojo looked helpless now. His once proud posture had collapsed. He was no longer the confident man who had come to take everything. He looked like a man who had already lost. S&M, once full of pride, now stared at the floor. Her hands were shaking. She knew jail was possible. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. It was all there, and it was all real. The judge looked at them both, then turned to Afiwa. "This is the kind of case we see in movies," he said. "But here you are, not just alive, but standing tall." People in the room nodded. Some clapped. One woman whispered to her friend, "She's a queen, a real queen." Another man said, "This is justice, finally." And still, Afiwa didn't smile. She didn't show anger. She was calm, peaceful, almost like she had already made peace with the past. She had walked through pain, through betrayal, through silence. And now, she stood in the place where her name was almost erased, not as a victim, but as a warrior. The judge said he needed time to review all the evidence properly. The court session was paused, but the message was already loud and clear. Kojo and S&M had been exposed. They had tried to take everything from a woman they thought was weak, but she had returned stronger than ever, smarter, sharper, and fully prepared. Outside the courthouse, people were already talking. Someone posted a photo of her walking in with the caption, "She disappeared in silence and returned like thunder." Within minutes, it began spreading. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. Everyone wanted to know, who is this woman? Where had she been? And how did she come back so powerful? But Afiwa didn't care about the fame. She didn't want the spotlight. She only wanted her truth to be known, her dignity back, her name cleared, and most of all, her peace. As she walked out of the courtroom that day, head held high, the wind caught her white suit like a cape, and behind her, she left the pieces of the lies that once tried to bury her. Everyone thought Afiwa had vanished forever. Even her own family believed she was gone, but no one knew the truth, that she had been quietly, patiently rebuilding her life far away. After the courtroom exploded with evidence and the judge paused the session, people were eager to know, where had she been? What had she done during those 18 months of silence? The answer left the whole room stunned. With a calm voice, Afiwa finally spoke. She said she had spent the last year and a half in Mauritius, a peaceful island far from the noise and pain of her past. She didn't run away in fear. She walked away to grow. In those quiet months, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She studied, she worked, she healed, and she came back stronger. While Kojo and S&M were busy stealing, lying, and pretending, Afiwa was earning a law degree. Yes, a law degree. The same woman they thought was weak now knew the law better than both of them. And she wasn't just studying for herself. She was preparing to protect women who had no one, women who had been thrown away, like her. Afiwa also started a foundation, a place that gives help, shelter, and education to abandoned women. It's called the Phoenix Home. She built it using her own savings and donations from kind people she met on the island. She told the court, "I wanted to become the woman I needed when I was hurting." You could hear a pin drop in the room. People were listening closely, some with tears in their eyes. She didn't just survive the pain, she turned it into something powerful, something good. But just when everyone thought her story was over, she dropped one last truth, one that hit Kojo harder than anything else. She looked directly at him. Her voice was steady, but there was fire in her eyes. "While you were trying to erase me," she said, "I found someone you erased first." The room was confused. What did she mean? Then she revealed it. In Mauritius, Afiwa had met a young girl, smart, quiet, and full of questions about her father. She had been abandoned as a baby. Her mother died when she was 2. She had lived in shelters her whole life. One day, someone mentioned the girl's full name, and Afiwa's heart froze. The name matched a rumor she once heard years ago, that Kojo had fathered a child and walked away without ever looking back. She didn't believe it then, but now it was in front of her. She took a DNA test. It was true. The little girl was Kojo's daughter. Afiwa said she had no one, just like me. So, she adopted her. She became the girl's mother, not just in name, but in heart. She taught her to read, helped her heal, gave her a home. The little girl, once unwanted, now had a future. Kojo looked like he couldn't breathe. He stared at the ground, then at Afiwa, then back at the ground. He had no words. The courtroom was silent again, but this time, it was a silence filled with emotion. No one could believe what they were hearing. Afiwa walked toward him slowly, not with anger, not with revenge, just with truth. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "You threw me away, so I picked up the pieces and rebuilt myself bigger." That line hit like lightning. People gasped. Some even clapped quietly. It wasn't just a statement. It was a message to every woman who had ever been broken, used, or betrayed. You can rebuild. You can become more. That moment became a turning point, not just in the case, but in the hearts of everyone watching. People started whispering her name outside the courthouse. Social media exploded again. Photos of her with the little girl began to trend. Rebuilt, bigger became a movement. Women from all over Africa and beyond began sharing their own stories, inspired by hers. But Afiwa wasn't doing any of it for attention. She didn't care about going viral. She had already won the biggest battle inside her own heart. She had turned pain into power, lies into proof, loss into legacy. And as the court prepared to reconvene for the final verdict, everyone knew something had already changed. Afiwa didn't just bring back documents. She didn't just bring a case. She brought a new truth, one that couldn't be erased, one that proved no matter how deeply you're broken, you can rise again, bigger, stronger, and even more unstoppable than before. The courtroom was packed as everyone waited for the final verdict. The judge came in with a serious face, holding the thick file full of Afiwa's evidence. The room went silent. Then, in a strong voice, he said the words that shook the nation. He ruled in Afiwa's favor on every single count. Kojo was found guilty of fraud and theft. He lost the house, the land, and even his job. Everything he had tried to take from Afiwa slipped right through his fingers. Esinum, his so-called partner, was charged with fraud and identity theft. Her face went pale. She didn't even try to defend herself. But Afiwa stood tall, calm, quiet, powerful. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply picked up her file and walked out, not just free, but unforgettable. A video of her walking down the courthouse steps in her white suit went viral within hours. Across Africa, people reposted it with the #sign. She came back stronger. Women from all walks of life called her a hero, a symbol of strength. Months later, she gave a TED talk. With grace in her voice, she said, "Disappearing wasn't weakness, it was strategy. I just needed silence to become a storm." And that storm had changed everything, forever.